So King Tut was the last heir of this powerful family that ruled Egypt for many centuries. Exhumed means after burial it was taken out in order to find few facts about it. Very short period that he ruled, and this was the last king. So they wanted to know the reason for his death. That is the reason they are doing all this CT scan, everything. Hello everyone, a very warm welcome to all the young minds of class 11 CBSE. I am Dr. Shalini, your English teacher at Prep School. Today we are here to understand one of the mysterious and a very interesting lesson, that is discovering Tut. The saga continues. So let us understand what is there in today's session, what are the important points we are going to understand. So here is a peek into the session of today's. We are going to learn about the author. Then we are going to understand the background that is related to this story. Then we'll understand the characters that are very important in this lesson, and we'll understand the summary of this lesson. So we shall begin with the introduction of the author. So A.R. Williams was the person who has written this story. He developed interest towards reading probably at the grade of 4. Okay, so when he was almost 9 to 10 years old, he developed that interest towards reading. Why? It is very interesting reason that he developed interest towards reading is that when one of his teachers told him to write a fiction. Okay, so that was an assignment given to those children, and he had to write a fiction. So that time when he finished writing it, it occurred to him that even he is good at writing tales. Okay, so he could craft tales for others to enjoy. So that time he started writing fictions. But this story is something related to facts. So let us see what is there in today's session. We'll now understand the background. So this story deals with the mysteries and various theories that are related to the life and death of this Egyptian king Tutankhamun. So that it is given as a short form, that is Tut. Okay, so this is related to that ruler. He died at a very young age. So there are some mysteries that shrouded around his life and death. So that's the reason this mummy has occupied a very important place in the history. So this story deals with that is the youngest ruler of Egyptian history. His tomb was discovered by Howard Carter. Okay, so he was Howard Carter, that is an archaeologist. So he discovered this tomb in 1922. So from that time, his mummy, that is Tutankhamun's mummy, has been subjected to various researches. Okay, so this is what we are going to understand in today's lesson also. How that CT scan was done and what are the facts that were revealed. So all these we are going to understand. So his mummy was subjected to X-ray as well as CT scan later. Fine. So these investigations have given few answers to the questions that were there. So probably most of the questions were answered, and few questions which was answered by Zahi Hawass, which was much later compared to this Howard Carter. Okay, so there were a lot of questions, few of them have been reduced now. Even now there are questions that are shrouded around the mystery. Fine. So new clues were found regarding to the death of Tutankhamun. So now we will understand few characters whom we come across in this lesson. So the first important one is King Tut. So this is the person we are dealing with the whole story. Okay. So King Tut was the last heir of this powerful family that ruled Egypt for many centuries. So he was the last heir. Then his body actually was preserved. Fine. So, and this was the first one to be scanned. So his body was preserved after dismantling and remantling there, and that was actually scanned later. So his body was preserved from after the work of Howard Carter. So that is what we are talking in this story also. Then we have Howard Carter. Howard Carter was a British archaeologist. So he was working on various archaeologies, and he has come to the Valley of Kings also. That is like a cemetery of this Egyptian kings. So he has come there and he discovered King Tut's tomb also. That is, he discovered it in 1922. So his search caused a lot of damages to the body of Tut. Fine. And he actually almost damaged the body, and there were very important clues that were lost, and later on his body was preserved. Later on Tut's body was preserved. Then we have another important character, that is Zahi Hawass. So Zahi Hawass was the secretary of the Egyptian Supreme Council of Antiquities. So he was the Secretary General, and he scanned Tut's mummy, that is he performed that CT scan in order to know the important points that were revealed during that CT scan. Since there is a lot of development that has happened in technology, when it comes to forensic science, there are a lot of improvements that has happened. So Zahi Hawass wanted to go based on the forensic science, and he wanted to identify important clues that is related to Tut's death. So that is what he does in this story. So Zahi Hawass also occupies a very important part in this story. Next, we have two characters related to Egyptian pharaohs only, Amenhotep III and Amenhotep IV. So here King Tut's father or grandfather, it is not clearly mentioned there. So he is Amenhotep III, and he was a powerful ruler who ruled this Egyptian kingdom for almost 4 decades, 40 years. It's not an easy job, isn't it? So Amenhotep ruled for almost 4 decades, and Amenhotep IV, he was a kind of a weird king. So he promoted the worship of Aten, and that's why he changed his name to Akhenaten. So he changes his name to Akhenaten. He attacked this Ammon, that is the sun disk, which was a major god. Okay, during that time, this Ammon was the major god that was worshipped by everybody. So he attacked Ammon. He smashed all the temples that were related to that, and the idols that were showing this Ammon's idols, and also everything he smashed. He was a kind of against this god. So this Amenhotep IV is said to be the wacky king there. Okay, so these are the important characters we come across in this story. So now we will start with the summary. I'm going to give you a stage by stage summary wherein you can remember based on the headings that is given over here. Okay, since we have already learned note making, I have tried dividing the content of this lesson to various subheadings, which will be easy for you to remember. So let us start with the first part. Fine. So the first one is the death of King Tut. So these points are related to the death of that person. So Tut was a teenager when he died. He was in his late teenage. So almost probably 18, 19 years he was there. So that time he died. He died when he was at a very early age. So he was the last hire. He was the last person who was there in that family. So he was the last hire. After the discovery of his tomb, all the tombs of Egyptian kings were there in Valley of Kings. So this was there in Valley of Kings, and this king's tomb also was there in Valley of Kings. And after the discovery of his tomb, the world has remembered about his untimely death. Till then, they did not know that King Tut died at a very early age. But sometime later, after the discovery of his tomb, there are a lot of things that were revealed to the world, and then only they understand about the untimely death of this teenage king, you can call it. Okay, so his body was exhumed. Exhumed means after burial, it was taken out in order to find few facts about it. Fine. So something that is buried and it is taken out, that is called as exhuming. Fine. The body which is buried and taken out to find few facts, that process is called as exhuming. So his body was exhumed and there was a CT scan that was done on his body. Fine. So in order to know the reason behind his death, this CT scan was done. Earlier, X-rays and all were done, but now it was a little different, which Zahi Hawass got it done. It was a CT scan this time. So the visitors were curious and very thoughtful. So all the visitors who visited that tomb, like people go to visit pyramids, right? So this time here when people are visiting, there is something that is going on there. A tomb is being opened and a body is being brought out, a mummy is being brought out in order to do a CT scan. So naturally people will be curious and thoughtful. Even they had in their mind that bringing out of the body like this may have some curse on the other people, like the people who are doing it. Maybe the king's soul is going to curse the people, is what they thought. Few were talking among themselves, few were actually quietly listening to whatever was happening there. Few were just reading out the information that was written over there. So this was the scenario that is related to Tut's death. So the mummy of King Tut is the next stage you are going to read. Fine. So on Jan 6th evening at around 6 p.m. So this happened in 2005 at around 6 p.m. This world famous mummy, when people came to know about his tomb, that is 1922, Howard Carter discovers the tomb of Tutankhamun. That time he gives details to the world that he died at the age of in the teenage only. So after that there has been lot of research that is being done over there. So here this world famous tomb was being scanned. So that is very important. So that was taken out of the burial tomb. So there from under the pyramid they are bringing this tomb out. So that time what happens during this CT scan, the weather was overcast. Overcast means dark clouds were all gathered, and it was like it was about to rain, and there were fierce winds. Fine, it was first of all a place where there is lot of sand. Maybe God is punishing the people who are doing that, is what the situation was. So like this, the weather was also very bad when this CT scan was being done. It was like probably something is possessed, like that you are inviting the souls and all. So that time there will be a weather change like you watch in movies and all. So the same way here also the weather, there was a lot of change in the weather. Okay, it was actually overcast. His tomb was almost 26 feet underground and in the Valley of Kings. As I told you, this is the place where all the kings of Egypt were buried. So his tomb was almost 26 feet underground. So they had to go down the pyramid through the staircase and they had to bring it out. So this was the place where his body was, and these visitors were obviously curious and thoughtful. They were very much interested in knowing what is the fact related to King Tut's death. Okay. So now next we move on to the next stage. So here Howard Carter's findings we need to concentrate here. So before this Zahi Hawass, whatever CT scan is going on now, just before that whatever has happened, that is being stated in the story. Howard Carter was actually a British archaeologist. He was the one who discovered King Tut's body, that is in 1922. It actually drew people's attention. Why was it? Why was it so important? It was he was like any other king, isn't it? But it was important because he was the last heir, and he died during his teenage, that is a very early age, and this family was actually the very richest and very rich, and Tutankhamun was supposed to be the richest of all since he was the last heir. So he was the richest. That's why it drew people's attention. So people were very curious to know details about his death. So King Tut was buried with everyday things. What are these everyday things? Forget about all the riches, like he had money, then like it is believed in Egyptian culture that it's a myth, whoever is buried, that is the mummies are created, they will have life after this death, and they need all all the things that are related to the everyday life. So here also he was buried with lot of riches and all, and here what he does, he had all these everyday things, means in order to get rid of his boredom, like things which he uses to play. Okay, so something like the board games and also everything was there in this tomb also. Okay, so all that everyday things were kept over there. Then Zahi Hawass started explaining about this. Okay, so how Carter's work had spoiled the condition of the mummy. So he tells Zahi Hawass, now who has come to discover something more about it. So what this Carter does, he actually discovers the tomb. He gets all the details. By hook or crook, he wanted to get the details. So what he does, he doesn't bother about safeguarding the mummy. He just takes it out. He does all the research and all, and he puts it back to the place. But now the person who came later, who is looking at this tomb, who is looking at this mummy again, he understands, he identifies what are the problems that were there when Howard Carter did the research and all. So Zahi Hawass tells how it was, how his body was there. Okay, so Howard Carter found this Tut's body in a nested coffin. Okay, nested coffin means it will have, suppose there is a coffin over there, so that time it will have 2-3 doors. So one door, two doors, like this. Okay, so there will be lot of cabins that are there over here. Okay, so here is where his body was. Before that, there was some other cabin. Okay, so in the first cabin, there were all some rituals that were done. Okay, there were few leaves that were found, olive leaves, and also Zahi Hawass was able to identify when this body was buried also, probably during the month of March and April that time, because the leaves that were found in this cabinet, that is in the first cabinet, that is above the body was there. So whatever leaves were there, they were actually found during they actually blossomed during the month of March and April. So those leaves were there. That is the reason he was able to identify when his body was buried, when he had died. Okay, so that is what Carter did. So when he found the body, it was like this. The first cabin, he found all the leaves and flowers. Then the next cabin, there was the body. Okay, this is called as the nested coffin. Okay, so here when he reached the coffin, that is the first cabinet he opens, then the second cabin when he opens, he finds the body. So there he could see the ritual resins. Resins, the thing you use to bind the mummy. Okay, so that white cloth kind bandage, I'm just telling this to you for your imagination. It is not actually the bandage kind of cloth. It is called as resin. Okay, so they used that and they had bound that mummy to some coffin. Okay, so there he could see that ritual resins which were there, they had actually hardened. They had become too hard. Okay, so he doesn't know what was the reaction and all that had happened for so long, but he found it hardened. Now he had to remove it in order to find out the fact about his death. If he is able to reach the body, like apart from the resins, he should be able to reach the body. Only then he will be able to find the facts that are there. He finds the resins that had already hardened. Now, the coffin was there and there is a solid platform that is there below the coffin, isn't it? This body was actually stuck to that solid thing. Okay, so this gold coffin was there. This coffin was actually made of gold, and the mummy was actually stuck to the bottom. That resins were stuck to the body. It had hardened. He could not move it also, and this body, this whatever mummy was made there, that had stuck to the gold coffin. Now he could not move it at any cost. So what he thought, bringing it to the outer weather, maybe it will soften that. So he thought that, and what he does, he chisels this Tut's body now. Okay, what is chiseling? We'll understand the process. Now Carter tries to loosen the resins. He tried to remove it. He thought it's just like loosening a thread. He just tries to loosen the resins, but he was not able to do it at all. So he wanted to keep this Tut's body in the sun. So he just brings out that body from there, from the 26 feet underground. He brings it out and keeps it under the sun. Just think of the weather. He has also done this research during summer only. So that time in Egypt, the temperature was too high. Okay, you can say that sun would almost flare up anything that is kept outside. But here what happens, though he had kept this body under the sun for a very long time, that is heating up to 149 degrees also, it is possible. Okay, so here that doesn't help this in any way. Okay, not even 1 inch was budging there. So keeping Tut's body in the sun doesn't help at all. Fine. So now he reported that these resins could not be removed at all. They are too hard. So they have to be cut open. They had to be taken out from the body in order to find the facts. So they had to be cut only. Okay. In order to find out to find the facts about the king's remains, they had to cut the resins only. So there was no other go. Now what happens? Carter's men, what they did, they chisel out the resins. Okay, what is chiseling? You just imagine a carpenter working on some woodwork. So using a hammer, he just chisels something. Okay, the instrument what he has in order to remove few flakes of that wood which he is trying to remove, that is called as chiseling. So that instrument is called chiseling. Okay, so here also the same thing they do. Using a hammer, they chisel out the resins. So now they were able to reach the body. Now what do they do with the body? They try to find out the fact, but they were not able to do it. They try to remove the ornaments and all. They are not able to do it because everything is stuck. Now, what do? They sever the head. Okay, they sever in the sense they cut the head. You don't use cut for the word that is for this process. Cutting the head, you don't use cut, you use sever. Okay, so they sever the head and they remove the mummy's head also. Okay, they remove it, fine. Then they chisel out the whole body, they find the facts and they reassemble it elsewhere. Okay, since they had severed the body, they missed out they had almost cut every major joint. They did not bother about losing the facts. What they wanted to do is they just wanted to find some facts, means his age, and they wanted to know when he died. So all these. So they had very minimum questions, very less questions compared to what we have now. Zahi Hawass had lot of questions, but Carter and his men had very less questions. So based on that questions, since it was very less, the knowledge was very less to be received. So they cut open that body only. Okay, so they chisel it from they remove it from the coffin and somehow they reassemble it elsewhere. So what do? They reassemble that body. Like however they had chiseled it out, they reassemble it and on a layer of sand they do it. Okay, so in a wooden box. It's something like there's a wooden box, they put some sand, they give a padding and they reassemble the body over there on that. So this was the scenario. They do it part by part. They sever the head, they assemble it, they take the body and they do it. So they do it part by part. They are not worried about losing the facts because he was an archaeologist. He is not worried about the forensic details. So now Zahi Hawass wanted to view that in the forensic point of view. How does the forensic help us? Like forensic science is a wonderful subject. What it does is if a person dies, suppose it's a suicide or something, postmortem that is done. Okay, postmortem is more it is related to forensic science only. So by this postmortem one can identify what is the real cause of death. That is the reason they go for postmortem. The police people, they go for postmortem in order to understand the real cause of death. So if that person was killed and then hung by somebody, then the neck bone breaks is different. If at all that person has committed suicide, the way the neck bone breaks is something different. So there are various bodily changes that happen. So that's the reason Zahi Hawass wanted to find out the reason. Was it a natural death or was it something else? What is the reason? So all these questions Zahi Hawass already had. But Carter did not have all these questions. Okay, he just wanted to know when he died. So very minimum questions. So he was not worried about this forensic details. He just got the body reassembled on a wooden box on that this one, the padding of sand. So this was another stage, that is chiseling of Tut's body was another stage now. Now comes the important thing. X-ray of King Tut's mummy now is the important thing. So there was a huge change in archaeology since then. Okay, from the time Carter had done this till now, there are a lot of changes. Now it is more of forensic science that is involved in the archaeology. Okay, so archaeology is more into this forensic science. So they are interrelated now. It has become interdisciplinary subject. So that's why there were a lot of changes here. So an anatomy professor had done an X-ray. So this professor's name is not mentioned over there. This X-ray that was done by this anatomy professor revealed an astonishing fact. So what was that? The very important neck bone was missing. So when they subjected this person's body into X-ray, this is much before Zahi Hawass doing it. Okay, this was much before Zahi Hawass CT scan. Now it is only X-ray that is done. So there was an anatomy professor who did it and he does this. Then that time he reveals that his X-ray reveals a fact that there was that neck bone which was missing, which would have given a very important fact, that would have revealed a very important fact about his death. So that was missing and also the neck bone was missing. The previous part, that neck bone was missing. So his death and funeral actually occupied a very important place in history because as I told you before only, he was the richest, he was the last heir of that family. So the facts of his death and the consequences are still unclear. That is this part. Even when X-ray was done, there also the facts were unclear because very important parts were missing after the discovery of this tomb by Carter. So Carter had damaged that body, the important facts that were to be revealed by the body. So this was during the X-ray. Now, we need to understand about King Tut and his ancestors also. So, this is one stage that enters in between when we are reading this story. So, Amenhotep III was one of the ancestors of King Tut. That is, he was there before King Tut, and Amenhotep III was a very powerful king. So, as I told you, he ruled for 4 decades, that is 40 years, and Amenhotep IV was the one who succeeded, who came after Amenhotep III. So Amenhotep IV actually changed his name to Akhetaten. Akhetaten. It is not Akhenaten, it is Akhetaten. Remember, later on only he changes his name to Akhenaten. Okay, so you need not have to remember too much about this, because these two we don't specify too much. There are other questions which are very important here. So this is just for your information, and that is there in the lesson. So Ray Johnson, there was another person, okay, Ray Johnson, he was the director of research center in Luxor. It was part of University of Chicago. So this king was called by him as weird, okay, he uses the word wacky. Okay, in order to call him as weird, he uses this word wacky, that is, he calls Amenhotep IV. So why does he call so? He attacks this King Amen, as I told you before. When we learnt about Amenhotep IV, he attacks King Amen, then he smashes all the idols, all the temples and all I told you, and he also changed his capital from one place to another place. So because of all these reasons, he is called as a wacky king. I mean to say, he was called as a weird king. Okay, so then after Akhenaten, that is Akhetaten has changed his name to Akhenaten. So after his death, there was another king, Smenkhar. Okay, there was another person, another king, Smenkhar, who did not rule for many years. His existence itself was a mystery. He was a mysterious ruler who ruled for a very brief period. There is no mention about it. His mummy is also not found. So it is just an information somewhere mentioned in Egyptian history. There was just a mention about Smenkhar. So you need not have to worry too much about it. He was there just before this Tutankhamun. Okay, so he was a mysterious ruler. After him only King Tutankhaten took over. Okay, it was Tutankhaten earlier. Then he changes his name to Tutankhamun. Okay, so there are 2 kings who have changed their names. One is Akhetaten, who has changed his name to Akhenaten. The other person was Tutankhaten, who has changed his name to Tutankhamun. Okay, Tutankhamun, Tut, all 3 are the same. So after him, Tutankhamun takes over the rule. Then after King Tut was ruling, he just died in 9 years. He just ruled for 9 years and he died. That was a very unexpected death. Okay, so that is why it is actually very mysterious. So the reason is not known. A very short period that he ruled, and this was the last king. So they wanted to know the reason for his death. That is the reason they are doing all this CT scan, everything. So next stage we move on, that is Tut's mummy and CT scan. This is the time where Zahi Hawass enters. Okay, Zahi Hawass, as I already told you, he was the general secretary for Egyptian antiquities. So here Zahi Hawass got this body CT scanned, and Tutankhamun's body was the first mummy to have undergone this CT scan. Okay, so this CT scan shows the real image of this King Tut. Fine. So now CT scan is blended with 3D printing now. X-ray went on with this CT scan. Now CT scan is blended with 3D printing. See, look at the changes that this forensic science has undergone, and also that is related to archaeology. How they related to archaeology. Now you can see over here. So this showed an image of King Tut. Entire body was clearly visible. Just imagine how the body was in a bad shape. It was bound with that resins which was already stuck, and Howard Carter had chiseled the resins out in order to reach the body. Okay, there were a lot of marks that were there on the body, but now you can see, since they had the CT scanning done, the body was clearly visible like any other human. So all those marks and all were removed, and it was clearly visible now. Now Zahi Hawass was very relieved to know that nothing serious was wrong. So he had thought they had lost almost all the important details, but Zahi Hawass now was relieved that not many details have been lost. Actually, this scan started the previous day, and the next morning he says that he was not able to sleep properly till this was done. So the previous day Zahi Hawass was not able to sleep properly, but after he knew that there was not much of details that were lost, he was actually relieved too much. So then what happens? Earlier when his body was exhumed, that means he is talking about the time when he was that his body was taken out, that is in the time of Zahi Hawass only. Okay, so earlier when his body was being brought out, there was extreme weather condition. You remember I told you wind was fierce, and there was severe heat also. So weather was actually very fierce. Now in between, what happens, just before this CT scan, just the time when CT scan was going on, the weather was fierce. The wind was too much, the sand particles raised up, and also all these things were happening. So now this CT scan was a portable machine. Okay, so portable CT scan was brought and this body was put inside that. So that time the cooler machine, the cooler fan stops working. So now everybody starts joking that it must be the curse of the king, because people were talking, right? That is, king might curse them, like whoever is doing this process, king might curse them and all. So they were talking about it. But because of the sand particles getting stuck in that fan, the fan stopped working. Somehow Zahi Hawass got another standby fan, and he got the CT scan machine work, and finally he found some result there. Okay, so earlier this weather was too fierce, but now his body was being taken back to the tomb. So till he was brought, he was outside. It was like, as you see in some movies, like when there is some devil coming and all, if at all you have watched these horror movies, weather will be fierce. So that type only here also it was going on. But later when his body was being taken inside, the weather was too calm. Okay, so then his body was laid back. So that time this Soul of Osiris. Soul of Osiris means it is a constellation. Okay, it's a constellation wherein there is one star which was seen there above the tomb of King Tut. Okay, it is like that God was actually watching all the kings, and he had a watch on this King Tut also. So it was believed like that, and now since the weather was calm, so it is more or less like that God was watching. That God is supposed to be the God which takes care of the people afterlife. Okay, so the God of afterlife it was called. Okay, so that star people could see there, and the weather became calm all of a sudden. And because of that star, everybody thought that boy king was being watched by this god of Soul of Osiris, and he saw to it that everything is calm and quiet. Okay, so this was the summary of this saga continues. So even now there are many questions that are unanswered. This is actually one part of it what you are seeing. There was an episode that was there in National Geographic. That is about this King Tut only. So Valley of Kings was the name of the episode. If you can watch it, it will give you more details. This is only about the lesson I have spoken. You'll get a lot of details in that video also. So this lesson also is based on the source that is taken from National Geographic, based on the facts that are taken from National Geographic channel. Okay, and the CT scanning machine also, it was manufactured by Siemens, but it was contributed by National Geographic Council. So these are the main points which you have to remember when you read the story. So I have just guided you, the outline I have given you. I want you to go through the lesson, read each and every word and experience that mystery that is there in this lesson, and how interesting it is. If you just go through the lesson, you will understand it by yourself. Okay, next in the live class we'll be doing this lesson. We'll be discussing about the question and answers that is related to King Tut, discovering Tut. The saga continues. So now time to wind up the session. Let us meet again in another more interesting topic. So take care. See you soon. Keep learning. Thank you for your time. Bye-bye.